Hey, everybody, welcome to the recap second helpings episode of That's Not What It's Called.
It
It
is
is
now.
the post show follow up show. I do the shtick every time. Yada, yada, yada. You get it. We had an awesome episode with Bo Robbins. That last name sounds familiar. If it does
Hmm.
to you as well, I think that's because he is the husband of Lynn Price Robbins. He puts the Robbins in Lynn Price Robbins. Say nothing to anyone. We are not that type of show. So,
It's Dr. Lynn Price Robbins.
well, she put the doctor in the Dr. Lynn Price Robbins. What, is this getting weird? It's not getting weird. We're moving on. We were here to talk about the deer skin trade. Now, I'm going to say this multiple times throughout the episode. Please visit BoRobbins.com. That's BEAU, Robbins with two B's.com. BoRobbins.com. Now, he was incredibly helpful when we were shooting the docuseries, like encyclopedia of knowledge, especially in such a specific and esoteric area as the
Yep.
deer skin trade. And yet, so much of what we do and say today comes from that currency, buck, dough, like how we traded credit, it seems, is derivative of that. Absolutely incredible. I know
Yep.
I learned a lot, and I find it super fascinating. So let's get into it, shall we? Why don't we start off with the woman herself, Ms. Robbins, Dr. Lynn Price.
Doctor.
Dr. Robbins.
Yeah, it was a fascinating episode. Like you're saying about credit, that still kind of blows me away because it sounds almost exactly like, I'll say predatory, because I think they are, credit card companies. Because
No pun intended with hunting.
Oh,
by the
yeah.
way.
There you go. Two different kinds of prey, predators. But how, these nations would get into so much debt that it would be absolutely impossible for them to pay it back, plus continue. I mean, once you start buying things, right? Once you have the best that there is, you're going to want to keep upping it. And they knew that. So they sort of, preyed on them in that way. The European powers were able to, use systems of credit for control. And I thought it was interesting that, two of the options were either pay off the debt or go to war with the creditor. Because unfortunately we can't do that with our student loans. I wouldn't mind pitching a war on student loan debt. But it's very, very similar to what we have today in, loan debt, credit cards. It wasn't that different of a world, and it was global. I think that's something that people don't talk about, the fact that we're talking about a global trade, and this is back before the American Revolution. This is like 18th century.
Yeah. I mean, they talk about it in the episode, or you talk about it in the episode as well, where it's like, it's simplified down to, I trade, 3 beavers for 1 deer. And like, you think of it on that level or that scale, which is like the equivalent of us going and buying a gallon of milk, like what it takes for us but us not thinking about what it takes to get that gallon of milk today to a convenience store.
Right.
And when you look at it, the systems were massive, and it was not even close to just a simple walk down to the, trading post and do this. It was like, no, the system was so intricate that we were literally sending leather and skins across the seas so we could buy bags that were then being imported back into the United States. It's like, that doesn't even make sense. Why would you even do that?
It feels like such an extra step. Yeah. Well, and it presented a question for me, actually, speaking of that exact thing that the episode didn't answer. And I'm curious here, if you know, is, obviously there's a lot you can do with deer skin, as we were saying, leather, and that could be turned into a lot of, commodities. But was it more representative in the way that a dollar in today's money is representative of services earned? You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't, I'm trading you deer skin because you could use the deer skin. The deer skin is representative of work that I did for you to then exchange an equal amount of work. Do you get what I mean?
I
Or
mean,
was it
are you
literal?
just describing currency?
Correct. I'm saying
versus, I mean, now the dollar doesn't have anything backing it.
well, and not
So
only
that's
that,
the
but
difference.
here's the thing.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the actual item. Let's say that we got rid of the value of currency. What you have in your hand is a 2.5 inch by 5 inch piece of cotton. I guess you could paper mache it. But obviously, a deer skin is something that could be used. But the dollar itself, the bill itself, is representative. Because a $100 bill in our country and a $1 bill are the same size. They don't hold any value but what we give it. Is that how it was? What is that? What deerskin trade became? That it wasn't just an actual deerskin and the value of the material. It was more representative of something.
I think in a way, because that was what the Native Americans, that was their currency. So they essentially started importing all these European goods, which means they're not making the things that they were before. These, skills, these trades, they stopped doing them because more and more they have to get more and more deerskins because they're going into debt because they're buying more and more. So it's sort of like tobacco. When I think about, 18th century Virginia, I think tobacco. That is what they were trading for goods. They'd send, their tobacco crop, and then they'd send like a grocery list to, a London or Liverpool, and they'd turn around and they'd send it back to them. So I think deerskin and I think those said that it was going on for like 200 years, that it was seen as currency. It was just useful currency because you could do something with it. So it's not like it was, backed by gold, but it was something that could be used. So if all of a sudden Europe decided, well, we don't need anything leather anymore, then it would no longer,
that value would have been,
then, go to gold, silver, or, pieces of paper that mean nothing but have pictures of the queen on,
Sure.
or king.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of it was sold for, I believe Bo talked about it, like for florins, right? Like so like the materials were then eventually traded for cash. So yeah, I mean, I think I kind of understand what you're asking in like the philosophical sense. I don't think it's really that much different.
No.
I think, like it's just, it offered more tangible value in hand than like, us having,
paper.
Yes. Making paper mache, statues, out of our current US dollars, that we can just print infinite amounts of. So,
and we didn't have a
well,
standard,
assuming we have like the trees and paper.
I'm sorry, we didn't have a standard monetary system through the federal government until after the Civil War. So we're talking about, 1860s. So it was all state. So you'd have Pennsylvania dollars. And so now it's so easy to think, well, we all use the same thing. Well, now we all use credit cards or whatever. You use your phone and it just scans stuff.
Money's just a video game now.
I know, right? It's just like
Yeah.
something on the internet you can get and exchange. Now
Right.
it's
Just
getting
look
more
at your-
confusing, I think, than it was back then. But there were many different ways. And it is like bartering. It's just the same thing. It's just, they wanted the deer skins. They wanted the deer hides.
Yeah. I also thought like it was like, speaking of like things that they could actually use, I thought it was fascinating that they were starting to import tools. And so they actually lost some cultural practices, like making things from rock and from shell, and they were importing metal and iron tools. And like that, that makes sense, as far as having like a sturdier material potentially, but also just the inadvertent effect on a culture.
Right.
And losing those practices, and maybe not entirely, but definitely as a regular thing. And it's like, that's just, you don't, not you, the general you, but also I never thought of economies like that at that time as being so complex and having such a large scale transition, right? Like, or altering force.
It brings up a interesting point that has come up in this show and indeed everything we've done so far, which is, of course, that it's complicated, but also...
Is it too complicated?
It depends on who you ask.
History?
I think it's one complicated 3 history. But if you ask me, you can go ahead and cut that out.
That's an odd way of saying that.
Moving on. I'm a
Is
dad
it a
now. I
prime
have to
way
make
of
dad
saying it?
jokes.
Ooh.
So
We need to get back to even. All right, Jordan.
But also it's the idea that we, evolutionarily speaking, have not really changed much in the last few hundred years, right? So we think of people from 200, 300, 400 years ago as being totally different,
Mhm.
and they really weren't. It's just, I mean, sure, their access to things and of course technology and so on were very different, but the ability to create a complex system was identical to our ability to do that today, and to fathom and think about the consequence of creating such a system and how that might play out. I mean, for crying out loud, they were able to write a constitution that we still live by today, which we'll argue in another episode might not be the best of things, but it does show that people thought about things in a very similar way. You can't just say, "Oh, that was a couple hundred years ago." So when does that go
Right.
back to? When did all that change? If I go, well, my dad's smart and my grandfather was smart, was his dad stupid? Or the point I'm making is we've all more or less been the same. Pat's
I actually
asinine
think
comments aside. Go ahead.
I actually think that worked in the inverse for you.
There it is.
Yeah,
There it
There
is.
was smart, dumb.
Right.
And,
If
Downhill.
only
And-
I understood what you meant, I
Yeah.
might be offended.
Yeah, we're not actually evolving. We're now.
Well, you
Yes.
might argue that we're devolving. Stay tuned for the next episode.
The
Yeah.
downfall of civilization.
Yeah.
the next episode of complicated 4-2 stuff.
Wow, we're losing
All
it
right.
here, guys. But the point I'm making is that
it was a dope episode, by the way.
It was.
I feel like it was like it's a casual conversation because it's Bo. We know him so well.
yeah,
He's literally Lynn's husband, and now we're just like
having
He
the
just
same version of it here.
destroyed our brains with all of his smartness
I know,
and
right?
ability, and now we're like,
I mean, if we're talking about reactions, let me give you my first and foremost. Like Bo's massive intelligence. Before we even clicked record, I asked Lynn the question, did Bo have notes in front of him? To which you responded, this is what
He
you
just knows all
responded,
this
Dad.
stuff. He doesn't.
Yeah.
He doesn't need notes.
Which is crazy because he would say, oh, you're talking about, I mean, he would list 7 esoteric individuals from a very specific topic, would know their names, the pronunciation. I mean, it's incredible. Of course, in remembering all that, he's since forgotten math, but that part is amazing.
No, he's pretty good at math.
Also, and also the funny thing is, Bo, I think, Lynn, you can confirm or deny, he can probably make and do about 95% of what he was talking about. So like,
oh yeah,
he can,
he's
it's not even
processed
like he
his
knows
own
about it.
hides.
yeah, like
Not his.
he can do
but ones that
all
he
of
has.
this.
Well, he's the definition of like, no one's doing it right. I'm just going to make it.
Exactly.
Like,
Yeah. If it's
what?
not perfect, then he'll just do it. Yep.
That's
it's like,
crazy.
I think that's the best way to learn about this stuff is to do it, because that gets you this personal connection to it. I remember it was history camp in I think it was in was it Northern Virginia? Was it George Mason University? He gave a talk about the deer hide trade, and he had these different levels of deer hide. So there's this one when it's completely finished really well, it's like soft, and you can tell like, oh, I want something made out of this. And then the levels where it gets down to like the worst, the one done the worst, the quickest, the cheapest was like crackly paper, being able to hold those and actually interact with these deer hides, as much as that horrifies me as an animal lover, it's still it makes an impression because it becomes real for you. It's something tangible. And I think that's something that,
That's awesome.
Well,
really
it explains
helps
why
history.
it explains why he has a crackly leather jacket.
Cheap. No.
He's so
Cheap deer hide.
No,
Jordan had that one locked.
I don't know. I was like, wait till
Yeah.
she's done. don't listen to a word she says or you will forget it. I think there is something tangible there, and there is a sense of irony that you're such an animal lover and a vegan, and he is so. I mean, I remember when we went to dinner with him, he got like a 72-ounce steak. I was like, I've never seen a steak
And I'm
so
like,
big.
I'll have a salad, no
And
cheese.
you're like, so
And Bo is like 160 soaking wet. He is like so wiry and
Yeah.
strong.
Jealous
and, like,
over
he
here.
just puts it down.
Yeah.
And then it's like,
he's a man's man.
And I'm out back grazing in the grass. Yeah.
You're out back grazing. So, but the other thing is that what's so incredible about that attention to detail, and not just that attention to detail from study, but from practical application, is exactly how we were introduced to Bo in the first place,
Right.
which is, he was perfect for the show. And we keep talking about this show. You'll see it eventually. That, the detail in the wardrobe was passed through the Bo filter.
Yes.
And there were times when it just didn't work and it had to be redone. And like the threads, I remember having endless conversations about the threading on a particular garment and why it was not authentic. So when you see the show, know that what you're seeing is authentic to the level of control that we could possibly do, which is also part of the reason we shot it on a stage, because it gives us the most amount of control. I mean,
so this episode has effectively become the reaction to Bo Robbins.
It's just the Bo Robbins reaction video.
Yeah, again, part of it's because he's such a friendly and he's done so many cool things with us. But it's awesome. He's like our historical Swiss Army knife. We're our historical research pit bull. Like you find everything, and so the two of you are
together. We cannot be stopped.
The ultimate historian.
If you ever seen a pit bull with a knife, then you know
they turn into like Megatron when they're together.
But bringing it back to the episode,
accurate. Yes.
Megatron was from a different culture. Bringing it back to the episode, I do think that there are so many practical applications today. It is super fascinating how currency sort of evolved, where our terms came from, and how our establishment and identity was sort of formed around that, and international trade and how it was, it was a huge part of that. So now I will say, last thing.
Yes.
Driving around where I am, which is near Valley Forge, it's sort of like how when we print more money, the value of the dollar goes down. There are so many deer around here.
Jordan's ready to start the deer hide trade again.
I know.
I was going to say he's going to start his leather
He's
workshop.
He's just going to chase him with his car.
Yeah, I'm out here hunting money.
Making money. Yeah,
making money. That's right. Go ahead, Lynn. Sorry.
Well, like you were saying with identity, I mean, this is a whole nother aspect that, we have this crazy idea. You think of Thanksgiving, and probably in your Thanksgiving in school, the natives that we were taught about were nothing, they had their feathers and they had everything handmade. They weren't even part of, European, it's certainly not global economies. It's so different. And I mean, there are still many people with native backgrounds in the U.S. That's part of our identity. That's sort of part of our collective identity that we shouldn't forget. And
it's such a disservice. Like
it's
crazy that like my third grade Thanksgiving project is like making a pilgrim hat and like a headband with a feather.
Yeah,
right.
And by the way, it's left off of or left out of the textbook that's an ostrich feather. Assuming that they were only wearing that, right? An ostrich feather from Africa because they had bought an imported good. Like that's not a turkey feather, that they had pulled from and then offered the turkey as a gift. Like these, and this is all happening before the American Revolution.
Yeah.
Right? So
these
things. It's such a disservice to our history, and like it's so rich, it's so deep, it's so compelling, and like. The stories, like talking about Alexander McGillivray.
Yeah.
and not to dredge up any
Here we
trauma from
go.
that name. McGillivray.
McGillivray.
Check out History Daily today.
McGillivray.
It's anyway. No, McGill. Oh man,
No, that was right. I
McGillivray?
know. Now we're
Yeah,
never gonna.
Yeah,
we're
now
gonna
we're
keep
all
messing it
all
up.
back. Yeah, thanks a lot, Jordan Evolution. Yeah.
Sounds like I'm the only one who got it right there. So I don't know.
But to like hear his story, right, and
Mhm.
how he learned from both sides of his heritage, being
Right.
Scottish and Creek, and then ratifying the treaty, which we didn't really get into. Like we could do a whole episode of
Oh
on
yeah.
just him. But like he brought together like these communities and like learned about global trade, could speak Latin, could speak
Mhm.
what was the other language? Was it Spanish or
I don't remember.
I don't know, English, right? Like Latin and English better
Yeah.
than Creek or something to that effect. Check out the episode at 2c4hpod.com to correct me.
BoRobbins.com. BEAU.
Robbins.com. Again, this
Fun.
guy,
I'm too popular.
he's so cool.
I
um,
purposely put the phone ringer on when we do this.
So you can
Yeah,
sound
yeah,
popular.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you
Yeah,
have your
yeah.
wife texting you in the other room.
It's an app.
Yeah.
It's called the Bing Me Every 30 Seconds app.
Yeah. Make me look busy or cool app. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
That sounds like I think you should leave like sketch. Anyway, we don't need to go down that road. But it was, it is such to kind of round that all out is just like, it's so frustrating that we don't get that full rounded history
Right.
because there's so many cool things. I mean, to learn about, like, and I don't know if this even exists, but like a deer hide mogul, like
Mhm.
what, like that's a cool story.
Yeah.
What did that take? Or whatever, just like those stories and how these like communities thrived and survived. And, there's a lot of, I think there was also a lot of conflict around it. So like,
Mhm.
that's also, not also interesting to know about, right? Like what were the problems that were created by this? What were
Absolutely.
the solutions, like all of it.
And I say
It's
let's
just
round
something
this.
we're missing.
Let's round this out with that note of saying, so much of this sounds familiar. So if you think that they
Mhm.
were just exchanging 6 beavers, 2 chickens for a cow and a glass of milk, it's actually very similar to what it was today, to the
Mhm.
way it is today.
It
Yeah.
could be 50,000 deer hide in 1 year going to England, like insane
Dude,
amounts.
the numbers they talked about,
Gosh.
that was
I know. By
Crazy.
weight.
Like, how do we still have deer?
Yeah,
Like, what
right.
in the world?
And there's
Yeah.
literally, it's ridiculous. All right, listen. Here's what I want to tell everyone. This wasn't our last episode, was it?
No.
second to
Yeah.
last.
Second to last
One more.
episode. I want to tell everyone to check out BoRobbins.com. BeauRobbins.
Wait, what is it again?
.com. BoRobbins.com. Check it
Any
out.
relation to BoJack Horseman?
Oh, good question. No, none, because that's BO, and it's not first names that are
So like
related.
you, Bo, Stinky.
You can tell that from the screen. So
I can hear your smell.
you're so gross. I can actually see you getting dirtier. Tommy Boy reference. Can actually hear you getting fatter. So at any rate, check out BoRobbins.com. Thanks. Listen to the episode with Bo Robbins.
2C4H, 2C4Hpod.com. Check
yes.
us out on intohistory.com/2C4H. We're got a cool community. And I am announcing it officially. If you've made it this far, thank you. We are launching our Patreon in January. We're going to have some really cool things for you all.
Yeah.
And you'll be able to participate a little bit more in the show. We are officially switching to video for season 2, which will be coming out late January 2024. And we have a lot of fun stuff. Hopefully some cool season 1 highlights. So you can check that out in January. And yeah, like we're so excited. We have some really cool guests.
Some big guests.
Lined
Don't
up.
tell them.
And
Don't tell
yeah,
them.
no surprises. Definitely not Brad Pitt.
Or is
Or
it?
Is it? Yeah.
Well, not the actor. It's
We-
Professor
yeah.
Bradley Pitt.
Yes.
Of South
Yes,
Dakota. Yeah.
from-
South
from-
Dakota. He looks
Yes.
nothing like Brad Pitt.
And Jason Statham, Dr.
Yeah.
Jason
Yeah,
Statham
that's
from
right.
South Indiana University of Pensacola, Florida.
Right.
ISPUFC College. Yeah. Anyway, this is a mess. We're heading out. Thank you all for being part of this, and I can't believe this is our second to last. We only got one more of these.
That's
Yep.
right.
Woo!
All right.
Yep.
We'll
Check
talk
out
to you
our
soon.
episode.
We'll talk to you
Bye.
soon. We're not going to talk to you at all. Wait, actually, if you sign up for our Patreon,
Third helpings.
you can.
No, Lynn, do not. No.
Oh,
All right.
God.
Bye.
Bye.